In the heat of an ordinary afternoon, the streets of Riverside become the stage for a shocking encounter, one that will leave the community questioning power, race, and justice. Mark Thompson, a white police officer, cruises down the street, his eyes scanning for trouble, fueled by an invisible but potent bias. He sees Sasha Williams, a calm and collected black woman, crossing the street. But to him, her presence is an instant red flag. There's no concrete reason, no alarming behavior, just a deep-seated prejudice, a gut feeling that something is wrong with her simply because of the color of her skin. Without any evidence or valid cause, Mark pulls over, his siren wailing, lights flashing. But Sasha, standing in the glaring sun, remains unfazed. She's used to this, the suspicion, the stares, the judgment, a reality she's had to navigate her entire life. But what Mark doesn't know is that Sasha isn't just any woman. She's no ordinary civilian. Sasha Williams is a powerful secret agent, trained in ways that Mark couldn't possibly comprehend. As the confrontation escalates, Mark's aggression bubbles over, and in a moment of fury, he strikes her. But Sasha does not retaliate. Instead, she stands still, her composure unsettling, her silence louder than any shout. This is no random encounter. What Mark doesn't realize is that in this moment, he has just provoked someone far more dangerous than he could ever imagine. Sasha is the victim of police brutality, but this story is only just beginning. The true nature of her strength, her mission, and the fate of those who believe they can abuse their power will unfold in a way no one saw coming. This is a clash not just of people, but of systems, of beliefs, and of unspoken power. Are you ready to discover what happens when someone truly challenges authority? The sun blazes down, its scorching rays reflecting off the concrete, as Mark Thompson steers his patrol car towards Sasha Williams. His eyes narrow, suspicion clouding his judgment. She's walking across the street with a slow, deliberate pace, nothing about her actions signaling any threat. But in his mind, she's already guilty of nothing more than existing in his world, a world where racial prejudice shapes every decision he makes. There's no reason to stop her, no evidence of wrongdoing, but to Mark, she's an outsider, someone who doesn't belong in the city he believes he controls. With a flick of his wrist, the siren erupts, and the flashing lights cast an eerie glow on the otherwise peaceful street. Sasha doesn't flinch. She doesn't break her stride. She knows what's coming. It's a scenario she's lived countless times before. The pullover, the questioning, the assumption that she must be doing something wrong simply because of her skin color. But this time it's different. This time it's not just another random traffic stop. It's something more dangerous, something that will spiral into a confrontation neither of them is fully prepared for as Mark steps out of the car, his hand resting on the handle of his gun. He calls out to Sasha. His voice is harsh, accusing, laced with the venom of deep-seated racism. "What's your business here?" he demands, as though her mere presence is a crime. Sasha turns to face him, her gaze unwavering, calm, unbothered. The weight of the situation bears down on her, but she shows no sign of fear. She's seen this before, lived this reality, her entire life, shaped by encounters like this. The tension is palpable, the air thick with uncertainty. Mark, feeling the sting of his own insecurities, pushes further. "I'm talking to you," he snaps, his voice rising. There's an edge to his words now, a sense of power he feels when standing in uniform, when the badge gives him authority. But Sasha doesn't flinch. She doesn't speak. Her silence becomes a mirror, forcing him to face something he's never had to confront before: the weight of his own actions, the hollowness of his prejudice. The seconds stretch into eternity. The onlookers begin to gather, their eyes trained on the scene unfolding before them. There's a heavy sense of discomfort in the crowd, but no one dares intervene. No one dares speak out. In the silence, Mark's anger grows. He's been challenged, his authority questioned in ways he's never experienced. And so, in a moment of rash decision, he strikes out. The punch lands with a sickening thud, the sound of flesh meeting flesh echoing down the street. Sasha stumbles back, but she doesn't cry out. She doesn't retaliate. She doesn't even raise a hand to defend herself. She simply stands there, a stoic figure, blood starting to trickle from the corner of her mouth. The crowd gasps, some stepping back, others frozen in place. Sasha's calm is unsettling. It's unnerving. It's as if the punch wasn't just a blow to her face, but to the very foundation of the power Mark thought he held. The people around them are caught in a conflict they didn't expect to witness. Some are uncomfortable, but none of them intervene. They watch in silence, afraid of what might happen next. Mark's fury rises, but Sasha's stillness amplifies his fear. She doesn't seem like a victim. She doesn't look like someone who needs rescuing. She looks like someone who's used to this. The realization hits him like a punch to the gut. He has no control over her, no power, and that thought terrifies him more than anything else in that moment. Sasha wipes the blood from her mouth slowly, her fingers smearing the dark red stain across her skin. Her eyes lock with Mark's. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The message is clear. She's not broken. She's not afraid. And this isn't over. The tension thickens, the air crackling with unspoken words, as Sasha stands tall, unyielding, and Mark begins to wonder whether he's just made a dangerous mistake. A mistake he won't be able to undo. The punch lands, but Sasha Williams doesn't crumble. Instead, she stands there, blood dripping from the corner of her mouth, her expression unshaken. The crowd holds its breath, their eyes wide, unsure of how to react. The silence is deafening, hanging heavy in the air like a storm about to break. In the distance, a car honks, but it feels distant, irrelevant. All attention is fixed on the woman who's taken the blow with an eerie composure, Mark Thompson. His fist still clenched, watches Sasha with growing unease. He expects her to cry out, to cower, to show the vulnerability he's been taught to expect from people like her. But none of that happens. She just stands there, her posture still and unyielding, as if the punch never even happened. The blood on her lips, her face, somehow makes her look even more formidable, like a warrior, not a victim. The witnesses shift uncomfortably. Some glance at each other, but none of them move. The rawness of the moment sinks in. They aren't just witnessing a woman being harassed by a cop. They're seeing something far deeper, something terrifying. Mark's aggression doesn't seem like the biggest threat anymore. It's her silence, her calm, that leaves them all rattled. Sasha is no longer just a woman on the street. She's become something more, something that demands attention, something that terrifies the very system Mark represents. Mark shifts on his feet, his confidence faltering. He expected fear from her, but all he sees is strength, the kind of strength that feels ancient, unbreakable. The realization hits him with the force of a freight train. She's not just standing still. She's making a statement. She's telling him, and everyone around them, that she's not afraid of him, or anyone else who thinks they have power over her. Sasha wipes the blood from her lips, her eyes never leaving Mark's. She's calm, controlled, like someone who has been through this before, like someone who has seen this kind of hate and has learned to endure it, and maybe even use it to her advantage. Her gaze locks with his, and for a moment, Mark sees something he hasn't seen before: fear. Not from her, but from himself. Mark takes a step back, his mind racing. He's lost control. His grip on authority is slipping. His hand, still trembling, hovers near his holster, but he doesn't make a move. The fear is seeping in, creeping up his spine like ice. The realization starts to settle in. This isn't just a woman. She's something he cannot control, something that goes beyond his badge, beyond his gun. The crowd watches in stunned silence, their eyes flicking from Sasha to Mark, unsure of what will happen next. It's not just the physical violence that has shaken them. It's the tension, the quiet storm brewing between these two people, both wielding power in ways no one expected. Sasha takes a step forward, the crowd instinctively parting as she walks with quiet resolve. Every movement is measured, purposeful. There is no desperation in her actions, only precision. She doesn't need to shout, to fight, to scream. She is the calm eye in the middle of the storm. And that calm, that stillness, is the most terrifying thing Mark has ever witnessed. As she walks past him, Mark can't help but feel the weight of her presence. Heavy, unyielding, like the gaze of a predator sizing up its prey. And for the first time in his life, Mark realizes he's not the predator here. He's the prey. Sasha doesn't say a word. She simply continues her path, leaving Mark standing frozen in the middle of the street. Her resilience is her weapon, and it's a weapon he doesn't know how to fight. The crowd is left in her wake, their perception of power forever changed, as if they've just witnessed the unraveling of an entire system, all in the space of a single moment. Sasha steps forward, her movements fluid, her gaze unwavering. The police station looms ahead, a place where power is supposed to be absolute. But she walks toward it as if it's just another building, another day. Mark Thompson stands frozen for a moment, his eyes still wide from the confrontation, but the pull of his duty snaps him back into motion. He forces his legs to move, following her into the station, though his every step is hesitant, as though something about the situation makes his skin crawl. The door swings open, and the sterile, oppressive atmosphere of the police station greets them. It's the kind of place where people are meant to feel small, insignificant. But not Sasha. She stands tall, not a flicker of fear in her expression, not a single tremor in her hands. Mark feels small in her presence, despite his badge, despite his uniform. He's the one following now, not the one in control. And that realization gnaws at him. The officers inside barely glance up from their desks as Sasha walks in. They're used to seeing people brought in, perhaps even used to dealing with the occasional tough customer. But Sasha isn't just a tough customer. There's something about her demeanor, her utter lack of concern, that makes the entire room feel like it's holding its breath. The clattering of keyboards and murmurs of conversation seem to fade into the background, replaced by a tension so thick it's suffocating. Sasha's shoes click against the cold tile floor as she approaches the desk. Her posture is straight and unbending as steel. The officer behind the desk looks up, his eyes flickering with momentary confusion before he forces a polite smile. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Sasha doesn't answer immediately. She just stares at him, her eyes calm, calculating, almost predatory in their stillness. The officer's smile falters under her gaze, and for a split second, he seems unsure whether he should be doing anything at all. Mark steps forward, as if to fill the silence, but there's a tremor in his voice when he speaks. "I need to process the detainee," he says, his words coming out clipped, like he's trying to regain control of the situation. The officer nods and begins to shuffle through papers, but Sasha doesn't move, doesn't blink. Mark watches her, his unease growing with every passing second. She's making him uncomfortable, but not because of anything she's doing. It's the fact that she's not doing anything at all, and yet, she seems to own the space, to own the room, the building itself. Sasha finally speaks, her voice soft but carrying an undeniable authority. "I'm not a detainee. I don't belong here." Her words hang in the air, as if daring anyone to challenge them. Mark opens his mouth to speak, but the words catch in his throat. He feels like a fool and he hates it. He's supposed to be the one in charge here, the one who dictates the flow of the situation, but all he can do is follow, like a shadow trailing behind her. The officer behind the desk doesn't say anything, his fingers pausing midair as he tries to process the weight of her words. Sasha's gaze never leaves him, and for the first time, Mark feels the true power of her presence. Not the physical strength she could wield, but the mental and emotional grip she has on the room. It's as though she's pulled them all into her orbit, and no one knows how to escape. The officer fumbles with his papers, trying to regain control, but Sasha doesn't wait. She turns away from the desk, walking deeper into the station, Mark reluctantly trailing behind. The silence that follows them is oppressive, like a storm hanging on the verge of breaking. Every step Sasha takes seems to erode the authority Mark thought he had, until all that's left is a raw, uncomfortable truth. He's no longer in charge. She is. And the question now isn't about her being processed or detained. It's about what she's going to do next. And no one, least of all Mark, has any idea. Sasha stands at the desk, the weight of the room pressing down on her. Mark, still visibly unsettled, hovers behind her, his gaze darting between her and the officer who's fumbling through paperwork. But Sasha's focus is elsewhere. Her calm exterior, her unshakable poise, remains the only thing stable in a room that's beginning to crack under the pressure. The officer behind the desk clears his throat, but before he can speak, Sasha's phone buzzes in her pocket. It's a soft vibration, almost imperceptible, but to Sasha, it's the only sound that matters. She slips the phone out of her pocket with practiced ease, glancing at the screen. Her expression doesn't change, but the air around her seems to shift. Her eyes scan the message, a string of cryptic letters and numbers, but it's enough. It's a directive from her agency, something that supersedes everything else, even the police. Mark watches her from behind, his discomfort growing with every passing second. He doesn't know what's going on, but the silence in the room deepens, a heavy tension sinking into his gut. Sasha doesn't respond to the officer. Instead, she taps her phone, confirming the receipt of the message. There's no sign of emotion in her face, no trace of surprise, just the practiced expression of someone who has received orders before and knows the weight they carry. The phone screen flickers for a moment, and Sasha's finger hovers over it as if deciding whether to respond. But then she lowers the phone, slipping it back into her pocket with a smooth motion that's almost imperceptible. Mark feels like an outsider in that moment, like there's something happening just beneath the surface, something he's not privy to. With a slight tilt of her head, Sasha turns to the officer behind the desk. Her voice, when she speaks, is cold, devoid of any warmth. "I'm here on a matter that takes priority over your procedures," she says, her tone firm but measured, as though she's simply stating an irrefutable fact. The officer falters, not sure how to respond. Mark's heart races, his mind a whirlwind of questions. What could be so important that it overrides everything else? Sasha isn't just another person in this station. She's a high-ranking operative, someone who answers to a much larger, much more secretive authority. And now, it's clear she's here for something beyond the scope of anything they could understand. She turns away from the officer and begins to walk toward the back of the station. Mark hesitates for a moment, caught between following orders and wanting answers. But he knows better than to question her now. He follows, his footsteps echoing in the hollow space of the station, and as he walks, the weight of her silence presses down on him like a physical force. The officers who remain in the station don't speak, but their eyes follow Sasha as she moves deeper into the building. She's no longer just the woman who was punched in the street. Now, she's something else entirely. a force that moves through the space with an air of undeniable authority. As they reach the back of the station, Sasha stops in front of a small, nondescript door. She doesn't look back, doesn't give any sign of what she's about to do next, but Mark feels it. The sense that something major is about to unfold. Sasha pulls out the phone again, tapping it with swift fingers. The screen lights up with another message, one that seems to contain the answers he's been searching for, but Sasha's expression remains unreadable. "We're not here for paperwork," she mutters, almost to herself, her words chilling Mark to the bone. The door opens, and as Sasha steps through it, Mark feels a chill settle in his chest. He knows now this is no ordinary mission. This is something far bigger, something that has been set into motion long before this moment. And as Sasha disappears behind the door, Mark's world, already shaken, begins to feel like it's unraveling at the seams. The video starts with a shaky, handheld camera, the kind that records moments without realizing the weight of what it captures. It's raw, unfiltered, a moment of injustice frozen in time. The camera pans, showing Sasha's calm, unflinching face as Mark strikes her. The blood on her lips is the only indication of the violence she's just endured, but her stillness is the story. The video isn't just a recording of a brutal encounter, it's a window into something much deeper. The silence of Sasha's response becomes louder than the punch itself. Her expression doesn't change. She doesn't fight back. She doesn't scream. She simply stands there, enduring not just the physical blow, but the weight of a system that has always seen her as less, as expendable. And yet, it is in this silence that her strength speaks the loudest. Within hours, the video spreads like wildfire. It appears on news outlets, social media feeds, and across countless platforms. The world watches in disbelief as they realize what they've seen. A woman of color, subjected to yet another act of police brutality. But this time, it's different. The difference isn't in the violence, but in the way Sasha refuses to give the system the satisfaction of her fear. Comments flood in, from people who have experienced the same injustice, from others who have only now woken up to the truth of what happens when authority goes unchecked. Hashtag silent resistance becomes a rallying cry. People share the video, repost it, comment on it, not out of voyeurism, but because they see something in Sasha that they can't ignore. They see themselves. Sasha's calmness, that silent, dignified stand, becomes the symbol of something much greater than one woman's strength. It becomes the face of a movement that refuses to be silenced. Her face is everywhere now, not just as a victim, but as a beacon of resilience. She has become the voice for those who have been ignored, the strength for those who have been oppressed. The hashtag grows, and the video is shared millions of times. What started as a single moment of violence has blossomed into a global conversation about police brutality and systemic racism. People across continents are standing together, using their voices to demand change. The comments section is filled with stories from every corner of the world. Stories of people who have been silenced, stepped on, or treated like they didn't matter. As the video reaches more and more eyes, Sasha's calm becomes more powerful than any protest or rally. Her silence is no longer passive, it is active resistance. It's the kind of defiance that forces people to look at themselves, to confront the truths they've been ignoring for so long. And in that confrontation, something begins to shift. Sasha's face, bruised but unbroken, becomes a symbol of quiet, steadfast hope. Hope for a world where justice doesn't have to be shouted to be heard, where the strength of one can awaken the hearts of millions. And in the middle of the chaos, in the storm of outrage, Sasha stands as the calm center. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful act of resistance is simply standing still and demanding to be seen. The video of Sasha's silent defiance is everywhere. It isn't just a story anymore. It's a movement. It begins with a ripple, but within hours, the ripple becomes a wave, and that wave crashes over the nation. News outlets pick up the footage, social media is flooded, and discussions about racial injustice that were once buried under the weight of indifference are suddenly thrust into the spotlight. People can't look away. They can't ignore it anymore. Sasha's face, bruised but unwavering, is everywhere. On TV screens, phone screens, computer monitors. Her silence is louder than the most violent outbursts. She didn't fight back. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. But in that single moment, she did something far more powerful than words could ever express. She stood her ground. The nation begins to question itself. Conversations that have been avoided, suppressed, or dismissed for years are suddenly front and center. What does justice really mean when it's not applied equally? What does it say about a system that can break people without them ever raising a hand in resistance? Sasha's stillness forces these questions into the open. People who had never considered the depth of systemic racism are now grappling with it, trying to understand the magnitude of what they're seeing. She wasn't just a victim. She was a mirror, reflecting the truth of a broken system that has oppressed, discriminated, and denied for generations. Her actions were not violent, but they were still a challenge. A challenge to everything that the system stood for, everything it claimed to uphold. In boardrooms, universities, and living rooms across the country, the conversation shifts. Politicians weigh in, some condemning what happened, others trying to downplay it. But the more they speak, the more they realize that their words are hollow. Sasha's quiet resistance has done what no speech or policy could. It has forced a reckoning, a national conversation that no one can escape. The videos spread beyond borders, transcending political lines, class divides, and racial barriers. Even those who had never experienced racial injustice firsthand now feel it in their bones. Sasha's calm becomes a rallying cry for the voiceless, for the oppressed, for those who have been systematically silenced. And with every share, every repost, the conversation grows. People who were once silent are now speaking up, and even more people are listening. But as the conversation gains momentum, the reaction becomes divided. Some insist that Sasha's silence was a coward's move, that it didn't accomplish anything tangible. Others claim that she's inspiring change, that her actions are shaking the foundations of the very system that once saw her as expendable. What is the right response to violence, if not violence in return? The debate rages. Some argue that protest should be loud, that it should demand attention through action. Others see Sasha's quiet defiance as the most powerful act of resistance they've ever witnessed, the kind that doesn't need to shout because it makes the whole world listen. The nation is left reeling, unsure of how to respond, unsure of where to go from here. The questions that Sasha's presence has ignited are too big to ignore, too raw to dismiss. She has opened a door that cannot be closed. And now the whole country is standing on the threshold, peering into a reality they have long tried to deny. The world has seen her stillness, her strength, and now they have to face it, whether they're ready or not. The world thinks they know Sasha. They see her calm, unflinching demeanor in the video, the blood dripping from her mouth, the silent stand she takes against a system that has been built to oppress her. But they don't know her. Not really. They don't know the weight she carries or the history she's been part of. A history much darker and more complicated than anyone could imagine. Sasha Williams is not just a woman who endured a brutal moment of injustice. She is part of something much larger, something far beyond the scope of anything the public can understand. The truth about Sasha begins to surface, bit by bit, as the world continues to watch her every move, to dissect every action she takes. She is part of a covert psychological warfare program, an operation so secret, it's barely even a whisper among those who are in the know. Her training didn't come from the streets, nor did it come from a textbook. It came from years spent in shadow, learning to dismantle systems not with guns or violence, but with the quiet power of the mind. She was trained to see the cracks in the walls, to identify the weak points, to know exactly when to strike, and, more importantly, when to remain still. Sasha's silence, her refusal to react, was not a moment of weakness. It was the culmination of years of preparation. Years spent honing her mind, her ability to read people, to understand the nuances of power, to understand that sometimes the most effective form of resistance is not fighting back, but making those who think they're in control face their own weakness. Her role was never to be seen, never to be understood by the people around her. She was always supposed to be the unseen force, the quiet operator who worked behind the scenes to weaken corrupt systems, to make them crumble from within. But in that moment on the street, when Mark Thompson struck her, something changed. She realized that her mission wasn't just about dismantling systems of power. It was about showing the world what true strength really looks like. And it isn't in violence, in retaliation, in brute force. It's in standing tall in the face of injustice, even when the world expects you to fall. The depth of Sasha's strength lies in her resilience. It's in the way she continues to move forward, despite the weight of the world on her shoulders. It's in the way she handles the quiet, unspoken trauma of being both the victim and the agent of change. Sasha knows what it's like to be unseen, to be unheard, to be treated as less than. But she also knows what it's like to stand up, to take the blow, and to keep moving forward with grace. Sasha's true identity is a reminder to everyone watching. Strength is not always loud, and resilience does not always show itself through action. Sometimes true power is silent, it's steady, and it's found in the way you continue to walk, no matter how heavy the road may seem. Sasha is more than just the woman in the video. She is the living embodiment of a quiet revolution, one that is just beginning to take shape, and the world is finally starting to see it. Mark Thompson's life begins to unravel in the days after the video goes viral. At first, the weight of his actions felt like nothing more than a fleeting moment of anger, something he could brush off, something he could justify. But the world doesn't forget easily, and neither do the people who now see him for who he really is. His colleagues, his friends, even his family start to look at him differently. There are no words exchanged, just looks, the kind of looks that make you feel as if your very presence is an accusation. They don't say it out loud, but he feels the distance growing. The phone calls stop coming. The text messages remain unanswered. People who once greeted him with friendly nods and casual conversations now avoid eye contact. Mark can feel the weight of their silence, the tension in the air whenever he enters a room. And it's not just the people in his personal life. In the office, the shift is undeniable. His colleagues who once respected him now hesitate to acknowledge his presence. The atmosphere has changed, like a room that's gone cold without anyone needing to turn off the heat. They no longer see him as the officer they knew. Instead, he's become a symbol of everything they hate. A man whose actions have now been scrutinized and questioned by everyone, from the media to the people in his community. Mark begins to realize that his actions, the punch, the assumption, the blind rage, have consequences far beyond what he ever expected. It's not just about the incident on the street anymore. It's about everything that led to that moment. It's about the system that shaped him, a system built on prejudice, power, and control. And now, Mark is seeing the cracks in that system. Cracks that he never noticed before, cracks that seem impossible to ignore once they've been revealed. The toll on him is psychological, emotional. The guilt starts to eat at him, gnawing away at his conscience, eroding the confidence he once had in his role as a protector of the law. His reflection in the mirror feels foreign now. The man who stares back at him is no longer the confident officer who wore his badge with pride. Instead, he sees a man who is broken, who feels the weight of the judgment placed upon him. The worst part is, he doesn't know how to fix it. The thought that keeps him awake at night is not the incident itself. It's the realization that he has become part of the very system he once swore to uphold. He was supposed to be the one protecting people like Sasha, not hurting them. But in that moment of violence, he became the embodiment of everything that was wrong with the system. And now, there is no going back. The worst punishment isn't the isolation or the public shaming. It's the quiet realization that he could have done better, that he should have done better. His actions, impulsive and violent, have become a stain on his career, his reputation, his soul. The whispers behind his back are now loud enough to drown out the voice inside his head that tells him things will get better. But deep down, Mark knows it won't. The damage is done, and no amount of apologies or redemption can undo what has already been set into motion. He may still wear the badge, but it's no longer a symbol of honor. It's a reminder of the day he lost himself and the system that allowed it to happen. And now, the real question is whether he can live with what he's become as we reflect on Sasha's journey. There's so much to learn from her strength, her resilience, and her unwavering resolve. What she went through wasn't just a story about a moment of injustice. It was a powerful reminder of how true strength isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes, it's found in the quiet moments when we choose to stand our ground despite the weight of the world pressing against us. Her silent defiance became a beacon of hope for countless others, showing that even in the face of adversity, we have the power to reclaim our voice, our dignity, and our future. Sasha's story teaches us the importance of remaining true to ourselves no matter the external pressures. Her calmness in the face of violence wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather a display of the inner strength that comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in your beliefs. In a world where so much can feel uncertain and chaotic, having the courage to remain composed in the most challenging moments is something we can all strive for. It's about making sure our actions align with our values, even when others try to push us off course. Sasha didn't just resist the violence. She resisted the temptation to let anger or fear dictate her actions. Instead, she chose something far more powerful: quiet dignity. Another critical lesson we can take away from this story is the importance of recognizing and confronting systemic issues. Sasha's experience wasn't just a random encounter. It was a reflection of a larger, deeply rooted problem in society. And by sharing her story, she sparked a conversation that led many of us to examine our own roles in these systems. We all have a part to play in making sure these injustices are addressed. It's about asking the hard questions, challenging the status quo, and being open to difficult truths, even when they're uncomfortable. The fact that Sasha stood up, or rather stood still, is a powerful call to action. It reminds us that we don't always have to fight with force. Sometimes, the most profound way to create change is through resilience and consistency in our actions. So, what can we take away from Sasha's story? The simple: stay true to your values, even when faced with adversity. Recognize the systems that may be holding others down, and do your part to raise awareness and make a difference. And most importantly, remember that sometimes strength doesn't have to be loud. It's the quiet persistence that makes the biggest impact. If you found inspiration in Sasha's story, I encourage you to keep exploring the lessons she's taught us. This channel is dedicated to sharing stories, insights, and lessons that empower us to become better, stronger individuals. So, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. By subscribing, you'll be joining a community committed to personal growth, education, and making a positive impact in the world. We're all in this journey together, and by subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering content we've got coming your way. Together, we can learn, grow, and create lasting change. Thank you for being part of this journey, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.